My name is Dennis Daneau, and I am now the current chair of the League of Women Voters. Yay. I would like to say a couple words about the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Now, to be a member of the League of Women Voters, you can be a member. It's open to any person, including men, just to say, any person who subscribes to the purpose and the policy of the League. I suspect that's most of you, because we are trying to do something here that encourages people to pay attention to what's happening in their community. And that's why we're here.
To support economic opportunity for women and girls, to support education and equity for women and girls, to advocate for equity in public policy, and to honor women who demonstrate leadership and commitment. We support school projects such as the Chimerican Creek Literacy Project, Grant Street Literacy Project, math programs, public policy forums like this. And we have a Women of Excellence Award that's given to any woman in the Port Townsend area that has given outstanding contributions to the community. We have also given over $50,000 worth of scholarships to women and girls in East Jefferson County. We hope to continue that and we get it better. I will now introduce our moderator, Siobhan Candy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening, and welcome to this election forum for the candidates for Port of Port Townsend Commissioner representing District 1. I'm Siobhan Canty. I'm from the Jefferson Community Foundation. I'm the Executive Director of the Jefferson Community Foundation. I'm very grateful to the League of Women Voters and to AAUW for having me this evening. I wanted to also thank KPTZ, Dennis Daneau, Gary Engbrook, and Sunny Flores for recording this so that the folks who couldn't be here tonight could make sure to participate in their own way as well. I'm going to start by just reviewing the process. Nice to meet you both. So we're going to start by giving each candidate a 2-minute opening statement. And we're going to do that alphabetically. And so Mr. Falls, you'll go first in that case. And then after the opening statements, you all will have opportunities to ask questions. As Dennis mentioned, you can go to the microphone to ask a question. If you'd rather not stand up, you can raise your hand and one of the volunteers will bring you a microphone. Or you can write them down and there'll be a volunteer to take your piece of paper. There's paper and pens on the back table there that you can use to write down. And can I just get the hands of I just want to make sure there are indeed volunteers around the room that are going to pick those up if someone. Okay, great, thank you. So before you ask a question, there are a couple of things for you to consider. You only get one question on one topic, so choose carefully. If you want to revisit that topic, you'll have to wait until other folks have a chance to ask a question too. We want to make sure as many people as possible have time. We'd like for you to answer a question in the way that both candidates can answer it. And please keep in mind that we're here to listen to the candidates, so if you could keep personal perspective, keep them brief and avoid making statements of personal opinion, and really give folks an opportunity to answer with the breadth that they deserve from their own perspective. We'd be grateful for that. After the question is asked, each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer. We'll rotate who goes first so that it's fair. And timekeeping will be done by Catherine. A yellow card by the timekeeper means you have 1 minute remaining, and a red card means that time's up. So when you see the red card, we're going to ask that you finish the sentence that you are in the midst of so that we can move on to the next question. And then lastly, we'll have closing statements that will be 1 minute each from each candidate. And then finally, we're here to educate ourselves tonight through a thoughtful and respectful exchange of ideas and viewpoints. We want everyone in the audience to feel safe asking questions and we want the candidates to feel safe answering them. So if you could refrain from applause, cheers, boos, hisses, and other creative outbursts, we would appreciate that and just keep the playing field level for everyone in the room. So are there any questions about the process this evening? Okay, well let's get to it then. The opening statement is in alphabetical order, so Mr. Falls, you have the opportunity to start our conversation this evening.
Thank you. My name is Chuck Falls. I'm an independent candidate for the Port Commissioner. I've worked for the Port for 12 years. I know the workings of the Port better than any commissioner in memory. I keep hearing about a study done by the marine trades to support their candidate for Port Commissioner. I have to challenge the basic validity of the report. It states they represent 20% of the workforce in the county, when the number is only 405 jobs. The EDC Team Jefferson's independent study states that the mill, healthcare, the arts, agriculture, and government sectors are the significant drivers in the county. The key here is independent study. Having worked for the Port for long as I have, I know that many of these jobs are not family wage jobs. There are no unions, and many are without job security or benefits. What the report does not address is the amount of revenue that they generate is not enough to sustain the Port's daily operations and do normal repair and maintenance. Sadly, this is due to grossly below market rates, with leases that range from 2 cents to $1 per square foot. Nevertheless, my opponent has advocated the Port put all its eggs into the marine trades basket. This means that the IDD will be used to prop up operations. This is simply not sustainable, since the money would be for repair and maintenance, which will not bring in one dime of new revenue. To allow this to happen would be to put Port in the same precarious position, and the IDD funds are exhausted, or as soon as 6 years. But what makes this idea even more reckless is when we factor in accelerating sea level rise. We simply cannot put all our eggs in one basket, because that basket may be gone in as little as 10 to 20 years. I support partnering with the county to build sewage treatment that will allow more and cheaper housing, which we desperately need, as well as opening opportunities for new business in the county.
Thank you. Ms. Heffernan.
Good evening. I'm Pam Petronic, a lifetime resident of Washington State and a graduate of Western Washington University. I moved to Port Townsend 14 years ago with my 3 children. Since then, I have earned my captain's license, started my own business, and worked as a public school teacher here. I'm currently a commercial fisherman with my partner Rick in Cape Clear Fishery. I've taken leadership roles on many critical issues in the Port. For example, we created an advisory group that has been constructively working together with leadership in business, city, county, state, schools, and our port. We commissioned an economic impact study which demonstrates the maritime sector as an economic and cultural powerhouse serving everyone in Jefferson County. Our maritime enterprises are the county's largest employment sector, accounting for nearly 20% of our jobs and contributing more than $12 million to tax payments in Jefferson County and Washington State. This importance is magnified by Washington State being designated as the first and only National Maritime Heritage Area. Indeed, Washington State's economic goal is to be a maritime leader, not only in our nation, but in the world. The success of the port is essential for the success of our largest economic sector here. I believe we must support the strength and vitality of the maritime trades, our shared maritime heritage, our environment, and living wage jobs for this and future generations. I have a track record of experience and qualifications to enable me to be a highly effective port commissioner. I will advance a port that is accountable, accessible, and sustainable for the benefit of all of us in Jefferson County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start our questions this evening with one that I received in writing. And Ms. Petranek, my apologies for mispronouncing your name, and you'll be answering first.
Okay.
Port commissioners must be long-range visionaries and see the port at 30,000 feet. How do you see the port in the next 20 years? And what kind of policy decisions have to be made now to get to that 20-year future?
Well, first of all, we have a real strength here in our maritime trades. And that is, the fact is, there's 2,200 jobs supported in Jefferson County. And that gives the taxpayers a return of $6 million to their $1 million that the taxpayers have invested. So I could see that return growing more. I would like to be able to see our children be able to have a choice of making a living wage here instead of having to leave our county or having to travel to another county for a job. Number one, we need to take care of maintaining our infrastructure, taking care of our tenants and the capital assets of our port. That should be a top priority in Jefferson County. And when we maintain our infrastructure, that is generating, we need to maintain the infrastructure that is generating revenue. And that's how we become even stronger.
Thank you very much. Mr. Falls. Sir, before you begin, I'm going to ask you to use your microphone so it can be recorded. Thank you.
Okay. Port must begin to diversify its portfolio. Needs to begin partnering with the county to overcome the wastewater issues that we deal with. It needs to potentially sell or lease non-performing assets and use those funds to purchase lands in the county. The fact of the matter is, climate change is real. Sea level rise is real. And as short as 10, 15 years, the assets we're talking about protecting could be wetlands. Where are we going to haul boats and place them? In the parking lot at Safeway? We need to start looking outside into the county for continued economic growth, because that is the primary directive of the ports, is economic development. So we're going to have to go there at some point, and we're probably 5 years too late now.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience presently? If not, I'll continue. Okay, so it's clear that there's some significant financial needs in terms of capital projects at the port. Large infrastructure repairs are no longer years away. Could you please describe the role of this community, the users, the commissioners, the maritime trades, and the taxpayers that will make the port financially solvent and help carry out the mission of economic development for the whole county? Mr. Falls, you're first on this.
The fact of the matter is the taxpayers cannot make the port financially solvent. They can only bail them out from IDD to IDD. Only the users can make the port solvent. The basis of the port is economic development throughout the county. Even 15 years ago, the users paid for their services with rates that also paid for repair and maintenance. Please understand that using IDD money to pay for that infrastructure repairs does not raise one dime of new revenue. That means that as soon as the IDD money is spent, the port will be back in the exact same position they're in today. Port users must pay for themselves and not be subsidized by the taxpayers. The marine trades have been incubated and subsidized for 20 years. It's time for them to stand on their own.
Thank you. Ms. Petranek.
The port is generating revenue. We are a thriving economic engine. A world-class We've got a world-class marine trades group of businesses and a maritime community of boat owners that are currently funding the port. We have an airport of which staff worked hard to secure 100% federal funding to replace the runway. The port can generate more revenue in several ways over time with existing infrastructure, business, and mortgage tenants. We must fix and enhance what we already have before building new infrastructure. We must respond to the tenants' needs first. Number one, prioritize a welcoming, fair, and stable leasing environment for tenants. Maintain and manage property responsibly. Be a good landlord. Maintain and collect those rents. Number two, we can generate more revenue through selling buildings to willing tenants. We can collect rent and renew leases with new lease policies and rates.
Thank you very much. That's time. So in the light of the role of the port as an economic development driver for this county, could you please tell us who you think are the key strategic partners to the port and the commissioners in carrying out an economic development strategy? Ms. Petranek.
Well, the key, say that again.
The key strategic partners. Who are the government, private sector, and nonprofit partners that you think are key to the success of the port of Port Townsend?
Okay, well, to start with, our local citizens are key to the success of the port, and that is those of you who are paying mortgage. You are contributing back to our whole county, but through the mortgage rates that you pay, that pay for the infrastructure. Secondly, the tenants, the business tenants, those businesses that have been built over decades of time, that have created business leaders, that have created jobs. And thirdly, we have at our state level, we have a National Maritime Heritage Corridor. We have at our federal level, we have a Working Waterfront Act. I know that our city and our county, that we all can join together and work on making sure that we keep our shorelines and our businesses well taken care of.
Thanks very much. Mr. Falls.
Successful ports have formed strategic partnerships with the other entities around it. The Port of Walla Walla is probably one of the poster childs for this. They're partnered with their county, they're partnered with the city, and they talk with a unified voice. So when they go forward to ask for grants and help from government agencies, they're listened to. What the port needs to do is start working on those same strategic partnerships here. We need to partner with the city, especially in areas like Point Hudson and its future. We also have got to partner with the county. The future of economic development for this area is going to be in the county.
Thank you very much. Please highlight for us the key experiences in your past that have prepared you for this role as a port commissioner. Mr. Falls.
Actually, I retired here in Port Townsend in 2005. I had a long career as a logistics engineer, building warehouses, transportation centers, and distribution centers. I have a strong background in actually creating jobs and growing businesses. When I came here, I went to work for the port. Since I've been in Port Townsend, I have maintained my employment with the port. I know the intricacies of how the port operates, how everything interrelates, and at this juncture, I think it would be hard-pressed to find anyone with more experience within the port operations.
Thank you. Ms. Petrani?
I have been actively involved in our community, volunteering above and beyond my regular work schedule, serving and leading on a variety of citizen advocacy groups, serving on the PTMTA, the Marine Trades Association Board, as a secretary. I've actively participated with leadership in our schools, our city, our county, and our port. All of these meetings have been opportunities to learn, build relationships, and actively participate in working together to solve problems and create solutions. Here's some of the things I've done. When the boatyard was empty and revenues were down, I was part of a 6-month task force that did a yard rate study. When lease rates were going up 10 times and we were having tenants leave, I was part of a lease task force study. I spent about 6 months, 8 months creating an economic impact study so that our city, county, port could have some facts to gather around.
Thank you. This is a question from the audience. Do you have a plan to expand the marine moorage in Port Townsend and the county? And if so, how and how much? And if not, why not? Ms. Petranic.
Right now, our port needs to take care of its existing infrastructure, the docks, the jetties need to be taken care of first, and that's millions of dollars. The port can do that with a lot of financial management and reducing expenses. Right now, I can't imagine expanding our moorage and adding more infrastructure.
Mr. Falls.
I would have to agree with Pam on this one. Permitting, the expense of expanding, there just isn't the resources to do that at this time. Marine construction continues to escalate at a rate of about 17% a year. Trying to imagine any kind of meaningful expansion of moorage within anywhere in Jefferson County with the onerous permitting processes that go along with it, I just don't see that it's a possibility. The costs of doing it, now you're going to have to recoup those, and that will really drive moorage rates through the roof more than anything, because you have to retire that debt. Sadly, I don't think we're going to see any addition to the moorage.
Thank you. This one is specifically about Point Hudson. Do you have a vision for the future of Point Hudson? And if so, what is it? Mr. Falls, you're first on this.
Point Hudson is problematic. We still owe $3 million in Point Hudson. The breakwater is going to take another $6 to $8 million. The actual cost for all of the facilities there is approaching $15 million and not backing down. All of that money channeled into Point Hudson is not going to generate another dime in revenue. We're going to have to figure out how to pay that off. The port simply can't do this, not on its own. If we don't have partnerships with seriously deep pockets, we are not going to be able to do that.
Ms. Petranic.
Number one, my first goal is to fix the jetty in 2020. That's been on the port's list, study after study since 2013, showing that it's failing. So that's the number one goal. Right now, the port can take out a loan, and it can start working on that, finishing the permitting process. Number two, I can see I just did public comments on this about relationships with other entities. For example, the Heritage, Washington National Heritage, and bringing them on to be able to look at Point Hudson as it already is designated a historic district. And so how can we protect that historic nature? How can we tap into the funding that is starting to swirl around right now and be able to fix and maintain and build Point Hudson?
Thank you. Housing is an issue countywide. Should the port encourage and allow houseboats? Ms. McConnell.
Well, houseboats would pay the same thing as moorage, so I would think that moorage would be a great thing. I was a live-aboard with my 3 children for a few years, and I felt that I know that the live-aboards are the watchdogs of the community down there. So they make our port a safer place. So I would love the idea of more people that are able to access that as a choice to live. I chose to live there, and it was a great benefit to myself and my 3 children.
Thank you. Mr. Falls.
Both my wife and I have lived aboard at the boat haven for 5 years on our sailboat. There is no question the value of the live-aboard community. Specific to the question of houseboats, the only real problem with houseboats from a port management perspective is they really are not going anywhere. So you lose that availability to rent that slip out while they're cruising, which you'll see with sailboats and powerboats. That alone isn't enough of a reason to preclude having them in the marina. I think that they're like any other vessel and should be allowed.
Thank you. What are the key environmental issues for the port, and how should these be addressed? Mr. Falls.
The shipyard and boatyard are an ongoing challenge as far as environmental quality. The port has expended tremendous amounts of time and energy to address these issues and have done an outstanding job of coming into compliance. But that doesn't mean the battle's done. We've got to continually monitor this. The water quality is becoming a serious issue throughout Puget Sound. And as long as we are actively monitoring what is going into the water, we're going to be fine. But that's why we have the BMPs, that's why we have environmental compliance people, and through their efforts, we're holding our own right now.
Thank you, Ms. Petranen.
Right. The boat and shipyard right now are doing fantastic. We just, it really depends on our executive director, and we went through a challenging time the past couple of years, and we're in the red, and now, in the past year, we have completely, are the star student. So, 100% compliance, and we have an environmental officer now that is helping educate and work with businesses, work with the different tenants. And I think that as one of the last open boatyards on the West Coast, people are joining in, wanting to make sure that we maintain the highest environmental standards, because they know it could easily be lost if we don't do that. So we have tenants and we have customers who that's on the top of their list. And we also have a port director now who is able to guide that and make sure that we're staying at standards. I would also like to join in, have other organizations join in to help with issues like in Quilcene, and that's like the Marine Resource Committee, and making sure that we all are doing our very best and beyond.
Thank you. This one is about the tax, the proposed tax coming up on the upcoming ballot. And there's a question from the audience that says, how many years will this be in effect? How many cents per thousand? And what specifically will that money be spent on? Ms. Petronic.
The IDD, first of all, is a levy that did not have to go to a vote of the people unless there was a petitioner. And the petition, there was a petitioner and it was successful. And so now everyone in Jefferson County will, on their ballot, will see something called Proposition 1. And they will be able to determine whether they're going to vote yes or no on the levy. It is I think it's a 15-year tax levy that the port can take this year's tax base. It's a fixed amount, and they can either take it within the first 6 years, or they can spread it out 15 years. They can, each commissioner with the budget cycle, each commission, each year, the commission can make a decision on how much to take. So there could be a year where they don't take anything. There could be a year where they can take up to 45 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Falls.
Yes, the IDD has a threshold of at least 13 cents per thousand. That's spread out over 20 years. Or it can take a maximum of 45 cents per thousand, and that's for a period of 6 years. Regardless of which way this goes, it's going to be a total of $15 million. The problem with the IDD is that there's some misunderstandings about what it can and cannot be used for. The present game plan is to use this to do maintenance and repair. The IDD, the spirit of the IDD, is to create new economic development. So whether it's 13 cents or 45 cents, if we can't agree on how this money is to be spent, we should walk away from this.
Thank you. Sir, are you waiting to ask a question? Please do.
For both candidates, I'd be interested in your response. Having a port commissioner who is also an employee of the port, if indeed that is the case, I'd be interested in your reactions. Is it awkward? Is it something that can be worked out? I don't think it's happened in quite a while.
So before you answer that, because we want to make sure that the questions are asked in a way that both candidates can answer. So there was a similar written one about a tenant and then also an employee. So I think there's a question there about how do you manage those potential conflicts of interest, and or do you see those to be a potential conflict of interest? Mr. Falls.
Sure. To begin with, the commissioners have one full-time employee and 2 part-time employees. The executive director is the only full-time employee. They share the auditor and the executive assistant with administration. I've already stated that if I'm elected, I will resign from the port as an employee. I think it's more problematic where you have a commissioner who is a member of one of the user groups, a tenant, a yard tenant, moorage. On continuing basis, they are actively involved in setting rates and policies for these groups. So being one of the user groups, I think, is a greater conflict or potential conflict, unless you're prepared to recuse yourself on a regular basis.
Thank you, Ms. Vetronic.
I want to make full disclosure on conflict of interest. First of all, I rent a storage unit from the port for $25 a month. I am on the board of the Port Townsend Marine Trades Association, and my partner is a mortgage tenant. That's it. There are other port commissioners at other ports that are mortgage tenants, like Bobby Briscoe, Port of Bellingham. He's a commercial fisherman, mortgage tenant. Another commissioner on the Port of Bellingham is a business owner in the port. I have, number one, I have a vested interest in the success of the port. So you can say, I am invested. I'm invested in the success of our tenants, in providing access for everyone to our shorelines. I have invested time as a citizen volunteer for the port.
Thank you, that's time. Thanks very much. There is interest in the audience to hear your views about what the priorities for the Port of Port Townsend are outside of Port Townsend. So from mid-county to south county and even throughout the area. What do you see the priorities to be outside of Port Townsend? Ms. Petronic.
Well, we have an airport and we have Quilcene. And there are opportunities to be able to get together with the user groups, with other stakeholders, with all the citizens to be able to look at what do they want to do and how can we do that. First of all, like I've said before, we've got to fix infrastructure before we can develop any other infrastructure. But we also need at the same time to look towards the ideas of what we can do at the airport and the ideas of what we can do in Quilcene. And I am excited about working with the citizens to be able to enable some more of what they want, because this is our port and we get to decide as citizens what we want.
Thank you. Mr. Falls.
As I previously stated, economic development, affordable housing, family wage jobs, these are what we need throughout the county, not just in Port Townsend. The fundamental stumbling block here is wastewater treatment. If we cannot treat wastewater, we cannot grow housing or businesses. Even our presence at the airport is going to be severely hampered as to how much we can develop because we can't treat the water. So this is going to be an expensive proposition, and we need to partner with the county, hopefully with the state, to address this issue. We're already experiencing septic failures throughout the county that is impacting the quality of the water. Quilcene Beach has been closed again this summer, I think twice already. We have got to start addressing these issues.
Thank you. Mr. Falls, you're first on this one. What are the 3 qualities the port should look for in the new director?
First of all, I think that the new director has got to have either port or municipal experience. Those are strange animals that have a unique set of qualifiers. The other thing I think we're really going to need is one with some serious financial acumen. We have some real problems that we're going to have to face. The other thing I'd like to see is someone who is capable of unifying the various user groups as well as partnering with city and county.
Thank you. Ms. Petronic.
It is of my highest priority to find an executive director that will bring more success to our port and build upon the strengths that we already have. And number one, to understand financials, have a CPA background or understand that incredibly well. to be able to provide commission and citizens transparency and understandable financials so we can make good decisions. This other thing is having a clear vision of the organization and who is already involved in the port, who we are. The employees, who are the employees? Who are the businesses? Who are the moorage and airport tenants? To really care about and to listen and engage and build a team. There's 30 employees at the port right now, and that director is responsible for the day-to-day operations.
Thank you very much. So I'm getting down to the last couple of the questions that I've received from you all. So now is a good time to submit more if you have ideas of what you would like to have asked. The next question is, what do you think are 3 things that the taxpayers of this county can do to support sustainable and effective solutions for the Port of Port Townsend? Ms. Petronic.
Number 1, here it comes. Number 1, first of all, the best thing the citizens can do is get involved and really pay attention to what the port is doing. This is your port, and for the port to be, we need to hold the port responsible for financially maintaining. We need to hold the port responsible for helping guide and direct what we want. And so use your voices and use your participation. That would be a great start for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Falls.
One of the things that has to happen is that the commissioners have got to be more readily available for citizen input. You can't do that just at commission meetings or workshops. You have got to have another venue where the citizens can actually address the commissioners. Regular office hours, novel concept. I think that we're going to have either some kind of version of Prop 1 or a levy bid, but only once the comprehensive scheme has been adjusted so that these monies that are being invested by the citizens, they have an opportunity to see a return on, which means economic development outside of city limits, out in the county. We're going to keep going over that aspect. That is where the future is, and that's where the future for the taxpayers will be.
Thank you. Hot off the presses, the most recent question. When the port financials are discussed, raising income is always discussed. But what ideas do you have for potentially lowering port expenses? Where can they be lowered? Mr. Falls.
It's kind of a weird situation when you look at port expenses. You see operating expenses as 85% of the revenues. Now, at a first glance, this looks like, oh, we're not controlling expenses. We shouldn't be at 85%. We should be closer to 60, 61%. But the fact of the matter is that if you don't generate enough revenue through rates, you're not going to correct that. Right now, the port has reduced their overhead to the lowest levels I've seen in 12 years. We have closed offices, merged operations, reduced staffing. So at some point, you can't cut your way to prosperity. You have got to raise revenues to offset these.
Thank you. Ms. Petronic?
To cut expenses, number 1, we just need to hold the expenses at the level that they're at, because this year we made more than the port that we have a greater revenue from our rates than we have before. And then that's projected to be even more. So if we hold our rates at a level, that generates more income. Well, let me start again. Okay, first of all, holding expenses, I think I'm tired. But number one, holding our expenses is going to be a huge, huge start. I'm tired.
That's okay. So here's another one about Point Hudson. It's one of the most valuable pieces of property in Western Washington, and there are two very different proposals for its use. Both are from nonprofits, one for private value and one for public value. Where do you stand on the strategy for the future of Point Hudson? Ms. Petroni.
I'm not sure I understand the question, except that I'm thinking that leasing it to a nonprofit, or?
So, I welcome the person who wrote this to articulate it potentially in a different way.
Okay.
There's two proposals out that I know of that are potentially going to come to the port for leasing that property, which is very valuable. One of them is for private value, the other is for public value. And I won't say which is which, you can figure that out. But where do you stand on that? Because the port can't make money on it. That's the problem. The port says we don't have the money to fix it, we don't have the money to...
The port does have the money to fix Point Hudson. The port can take out a loan right now based upon the money that the port has in the bank right now and based upon its budget for this next year. So the port can fix the jetty, it can take out a loan, it can pay for that, and it can make sure that it gets all of its financials very clear before it thinks about the next step. And the next step is, do we lease it to individual businesses, or do we look at leasing it to, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure of the exact question. I know that the Northwest Maritime Center offered a lease a year ago, and the port didn't have enough information that it provided to the public for us to even make a good decision about it. So I feel that they need to take care of some basic financial management before they can offer a lease that we can even think about.
Thank you. Mr. Falls.
The port's borrowing capabilities at this point is around $4.5 million. The breakwater is going to take between $6 and $8 million. The solution actually is some kind of partnership where we're going to be leasing to public or private. That being said, there's a couple of issues on the table. What about the current debt that the port holds? Will our new partner absorb that? That would be great. That will return back to the port hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for other development. Are they going to take over the repairs? That would be great. I'd love to see that. Last, with this partnership, are we going to see an actual lease rate that will come to the port? So we can look at forming these partnerships, and if it answers those three questions, we should do it.
Thank you very much. Sir, are you waiting to ask a question? Please do.
According to the budget that was temporary, the preliminary budget that was released last week at the port meeting, the port makes about $1.3 million in operations profits, takes in a little over $1 million in taxes, so it has $2.3 million in cash, less the debt service of about $1 million. It has $1.3 million in round terms. What would be your top priorities in the coming year for that excess $1.3 million? how would you spend that money?
Mr. Falls?
With the capital projects that the port currently has on the books, 1.5 million is a lot, but it's not going to address all of them. And again, if we're talking, what would I do with that money? I would be looking at putting it into something we're going to get a return on investments, not just maintenance. We've got some issues that could be resolved with that kind of money, in particular in Quilcene. They wouldn't require anywhere near that amount. But it would go a long way to addressing their issues. So I think that, whenever we have the ability to spend some money outside of Port Townsend to upgrade our facilities, we should be doing it.
Ms. Petronic?
What would I do with that money? Number one, I would fix the south jetty. That is not $6 million. That is half of that. That is what is currently in the budget, a $3 million fix on the south jetty. Number two, I would dredge Quilcene so that they can get in and out of their harbor. And then number three, to answer an earlier question, the port currently has set aside $750,000 every year for maintenance. I would like to see a maintenance plan for the year of where those expenditures are going to go, and I would like to see a monthly report on what has been spent out of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question on the Point Hudson question. If debt results from the repairs needed at Point Hudson, what is the debt repayment strategy for that cost? Ms. Petronic?
Right now, the port can take out that loan, and it would be, the payments would be about $400,000 a year. And right now, the port it does have debt of $1 million. Adding on $400,000 a year is affordable, so we can take out a loan.
Thank you. Mr. Falls?
The current debt that we have at Point Hudson is for past repairs. We haven't really been paying this off. What we have been doing is paying interest. When the note starts to come due, then we refinance. We are not really reducing this obligation. This is a never-ending situation as it's now currently set. We have got to start looking at how we can retire debt, not refinance.
Are there any further questions from the audience? Yes, there's one more. Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much. Do you feel port meetings and workshops are important to attend in person? Do you feel the public's input is important to help you make a decision about an issue? And how many meetings have you attended in the past year in person? I believe it's Mr. Falls, and my apology. Did you just answer the last question? I think it's Mr. Falls, sorry.
We'll start with the last part of that first. My attendance at the port meetings is predicated a little bit on my job. Evening meetings are more doable. This time of year I have Tuesdays and Wednesdays off, so I've been able to attend more as we move forward. The problem with port meetings and workshops is because of the constraints, it can be very difficult for a citizen to have direct input. That's why I'm thinking going forward that maintaining regular office hours is going to be even more important, where people can come in and see you and tell you their ideas. Moving those office hours around. not just time of day, but the day. Some on the weekends, some in outlying areas like Quilcing, so that the actual citizens can get together one-on-one with a commissioner.
Thank you. Ms. Petronic?
I would like to say that supporting the commissioners with your expertise is one of the greatest things that you can do. And there are so many different ways to do it. With the grand finale, your public comments at a meeting. But number one, you can call your port commissioners anytime, you can meet with them anytime, and I'm saying that because I have experienced that. You can support them by creating a group of citizen advocates that put together ideas and solutions to be able to present to the port commissioners. And then you can use your port meetings as a way to learn how the commission works and operates and the relationships with the staff and make public comments that are on the record. And then in conclusion, I value our government of the way that the commission works. I value my time with all these different citizens in different groups, and I have attended every single port meeting that I can think of in the past 4 years, and I have a full-time job.
Thank you very much. So there being no further questions from the audience, I'd like to ask the candidates to provide their 1-minute closing statements. Because Mr. Falls went first in the opening statements, Ms. Petronic, I'm going to invite you to begin.
1 minute? Okay. Here is what is different about me. For the past several years, I have been an active citizen advocate and have surrounded myself with experts, listening, learning, building relationships, and working together for solutions. The port cannot afford risky new developments. I believe in a track record of investments. It is prudent and responsible to prioritize protecting and investing in assets that have been built and working for decades. The economic impact study clearly demonstrates the maritime sector is a successful business model for all of Jefferson County. I've created relationships and experiences that will enable me to step into the Port Commissioner's role on day one. I care very much about this special place we live, our shared maritime heritage, culture, our environment, and living wage jobs for this and future generations. I want a port that is financially accountable, so we know where every penny goes and how it is being invested. I want a port that is accessible and affordable to all Jefferson County residents. And
Thank you so much. Mr. Falls.
Just to restate my position, climate change is happening. It's all around us. Sea level rise is all around us. We have got to start diversifying the port's portfolio. We have got to make these investments in the county. There will be no port if everything is sequestered here and goes underwater, whether through actual flooding or out of control depth.
Please help me thank our candidates this evening. Democracy looks like. Thank you for putting our democracy to work. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, AAUW, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.